Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are going to take a step back and take a fully spoilery look at the Jedi, or Chapter 13 of The Mandalorian. There was just so much in this episode. So much was revealed, and in so few words that it's hard to even know where to start. So I'm going to start with the uncomfortable stuff first. The changes that we as the fandom have to face. The first and most obvious is that our beloved and belovedly animated Ahsoka Tano has been adapted from animation to live action. And what can I say? I absolutely adore this character. She was one of my favorites from the first, and this was jarring. My brain was so used to the smooth lines of an animated skin that it just felt wrong for a good chunk of the episode whenever the camera was on her. That being said, I am on the spectrum, and whenever I have to face distinct visual change, I will detest it for the first 48 hours. This holds true for everything from haircuts to operating systems. Then I get over it. For this change, a visual change of the like that usually grates on my brain for days, 15 minutes tops before the back of my brain quietly accepted that this was in fact my beloved Ahsoka. The creators did good with this character. She looks like Ahsoka. She moves like Ahsoka. Kudos to the actress. She has all these little movements and quirks and behaviors that are totally the Ahsoka from the Clone Wars. She moves so much like Ahsoka that I had to wonder if the creators in the last season of Clone Wars did motion capture of the actress to hone Ahsoka's movements in preparation for this. And here's the funny thing. It wasn't Ahsoka's face that made my brain finally calm down and accept her. It was her shoulders. Those amber orange, well-muscled, rounded, just-so shoulders. I am not sure why. Maybe it is her distinctive head shape as seen from the rear. Maybe it's that the same outfit she was wearing when we last saw her in the Rebels, but when I saw her with her cloak off and her back turned, my brain was like, yes, that one, that's our girl. The creators picked the perfect actress to fill the role. They did her makeup wonderfully. She's directed and choreographed great. I found myself dearly hoping that the prosthetics for her Leku were much lighter than they look because I want to see as much of her as possible, and I don't want the actress to suffer for my entertainment. I have also heard, but haven't been able to research it, that there is simply an upper size limit to the head prosthetics if the character is going to be performing any action scenes. If you recall, Shakti in the live-action movies had Leku that reached nearly to the floor. However, she didn't do much other than stand around or walk about gracefully. According to the rumors, the choreographer said that there is simply no way to make any jumping or spinning action scene work with headsets past the length of what we see on Ahsoka here. Take that for what it's worth, and don't come complaining to me if we do see someone with longer Leku bouncing around the set later. Actually, do come to me. I'd like to know about it. However, on the next point of change, the second thing is that, of course, now we know Baby Yoda's real name, and boy and howdy does that take some getting used to. So give me a tick. There it is. His name is Grogu. Now, normally, like I said, I have to wait 48 hours to know if I like a bit of new information. I have to chew it over, work it over in my brain. But Grogu is just the perfect name, and after an initial ouch moment, I shifted from Baby Yoda to Grogu. My brain went all, yes, we likes it, yes we do. Of course we had the bad reaction at first, precious. We didn't like the change, no we didn't. But the clever little hobbitses named our prejudices good. Like the old one's name it is, but not too like. Nice round syllables. Matches the old one's voice, yes it does. And once I got through the thought past the awe filter, I can see the genius in that. Yoda and young Grogu, as far as we can tell, have low rolling voices. Lots of R and G sounds, lots of O sounds. Also, Grogu is just a cute little name. Anyway, I like it, and I liked it nearly instantly. This could just be emotional creep from Grogu himself, making any name acceptable that it's attached to him, but that is what it is. Now, there was a third thing that bugs me at the end of this episode. Evil Lady kept a luxurious garden with a large, dark, ominous pond. In this pond was something alive that she fed while making plots with her minions. We saw the distinct blood-red color of the scraps she was feeding the thing. This was clearly a setup for her to feed one of her minions to it, and then for it to devour her when she was inevitably defeated by the good guys. That's just how it works. If a classy evil villain has a murky koi pond that the creature lives in, it will, at the end of the villain's story arc, get to eat the villain. This is the circle of evil life. But no, if it did happen, we the audience are cheated out of watching the villain fall back into the waiting maw or tentacles, or both, of the dangerous pet that they have kept and taught to eat the flesh of humans. This is just wrong. Give me my mentally scarring scene of karmic vengeance. I kid. Audience me is quite happy to be spared yet another mental scar, but author me is still dissatisfied with this. Now, onto some interesting world building. In 2 short sentences, Ahsoka answers questions that have been plaguing the fandom since The Phantom Menace hit theaters. What happens if the Jedi refuse to take in a youngling because they sense too much fear or attachment in them? How in the verse could they possibly be better for a child to grow up with this power running wild than for them to grow up learning how to control it? This has been debated right up to the air date of this episode, and in 2 completely natural lines of dialogue, Ahsoka answers those questions. First, she asks Dan if Give me a minute, Baby Yoda. Grogu can still use the Force. This implies that it is perfectly natural and normal for a Force-sensitive child to grow out of using their Force powers if they are not trained. Now, this has never been established before, but it makes sense in retrospect. If Qui-Gon had just left Anakin on Tatooine, his skills and abilities that he didn't even know how to use would have simply atrophied. This has a good real-world analog, too. Children have fantastic language abilities. Up until a baby is about 6 months old, the child can equally hear every vocalization a human being is capable of making, and they can begin to practice that. However, at 6 months, their brains prioritize learning the language that they are hearing and actually loses the ability to differentiate between sounds that they don't hear on a daily basis. For example, if you took 2 babies, one from Tokyo and one from Chicago, and tested them at 5 months, they would both readily respond to every sound you made, all of your R sounds and all of your L sounds. 4 months later, the baby from Tokyo would only respond to the L and R sounds common in Japanese, and the LA baby will only respond to the English R and L sounds. They literally lose an ability that they had just weeks ago, and it is all perfectly natural. Then, from infancy to puberty, you have the ability to master any language, no matter how different it is from your mother tongue. But once puberty hits, you lose that ability. Any language you learn after puberty will always be spoken with an accent. So not only does this explanation that Ahsoka offers make a lot of oddities in the behavior of the Jedi make sense, it is backed up by real science. And this implication is restated when Ahsoka refuses to train Baby Yoda, saying that rather than see someone so attached turn to the dark side again, she would rather leave Grogu untrained. So much of this is explained with just a few lines of dialogue, and I really like the way the writers keep distracting us with tropes and setting up situations that even I can't predict. Take, for instance, the mercenary that the evil Class C lady had hired to be the captain of her guard, a gunfighter, Din Djarin called him. I didn't know what his fate was going to be until the last fatal shot. He was a grim-faced minion who was working for the evil lady, so disposable, he should die easily. However, his face was shown when the other mooks' faces weren't, suggesting recurring character material. And he was wearing an Imperial-style uniform, but he was wearing his armor in the same configuration that Obi-Wan and Anakin wore theirs during the middle of the Clone Wars, a visual cue for a possible good guy. When talking to Ahsoka, Mando points out the guy's ex-military with the suggestion that he was only recently hired, which, when added to the dude's lines later on, suggests that he might be willing to walk away from the evil lady. You just can't be sure if this guy is going to end up biting it until the very end of the episode. These creators are masters of understanding the tropes that they are working with them and playing with these tropes to give you sensations that wouldn't necessarily just come from the situation if they didn't use the tropes. To that note, there was one of their signature indulgent scenes to remind us that we are in a space samurai western after all. The concerned townfolk see a villain about to get a drop shot on the hero from an opposite roof and shouts out a warning just in time for the hero to whip out his sidearm and blast the villain over his shoulder. That's some good spaghetti there. One of the little moments that I loved was when said roof villain was getting up on the roof. They didn't make him, a robot, mounts the roof like a human. The robot moved a lot like one of those robots do in videos that come out from robotics labs occasionally when the engineers want to share something that pushes the envelope of functionality. The creators clearly designed the robot movements to look like robot movements do now, but not just cheap, readily available robot movements, the robot movements that are in the lab being developed. But creators pushed the dexterity that the robot would display up several times. If I may make a prediction, I think that this scene will still look good in 20 years, 50 years, maybe 100 years from now. And then, of course, the big name drop. We knew from the start that Ahsoka was looking for whoever the evil lady is actually working for. Near the end, we find out who that is. Grand Admiral Thrawn is canonically in the Mandalorian universe, at least by name, and given that Moff Gideon's actor has been dropping hints that the good Moff is working for a big bad beyond him, there is every chance that we are going to get to see our blue-skinned tactical genius in action. When I took my notes for this, I went back to look at them. I thought I'd written Thrawn, but what I actually just written was Ann! Okay, so yeah, I was really excited. Grand Admiral Thrawn was one of my favorite villains from the expanded universe, and I read every book that had him in it I could get my hands on at the local library when I was a teenager. So, I'm really excited about that. I really, really hope we'll get to see Admiral Thrawn in the blue-skinned flesh, as it were, in this series. But if he's getting his own spin-off series, that would be awesome, too. Anyway, that's really exciting. But now, let's look at the time frame, something I haven't done yet. Now, there was a time skip between the last scenes of Rebels from the age of hairless Syndulla's baby boy of between 5 and 7 years. That between when the Battle of Yavin and the last scene we see in Rebels, we're looking at just over half a decade there. And this is important because at the end of that last scene of Rebels, Ahsoka has her leku are really long. She's a very mature-looking member of her species, nearly as old as Shakti at this point. But that's when we look at her right before she sets off on her search for Ezra with Sabine. And Ezra was last seen in the company of Thrawn. Ezra was also strong in the Force. That means he has a high M count. And I'm just saying that Ezra would have had a lot more blood to harvest than Baby Yoda would. So, could it have been Ezra that was the donor Dr. Pershing was referring to in the message to Moff Gideon? Remember, Moff Gideon was awfully casual about incinerating little Grogu, and that makes a lot more sense if he knew that he had a whole adult human to drain from. But then we face the final... But then, where would Ezra be? Because if Ahsoka still went looking for him at the end of Rebels, and the length of her leku strongly suggests that at this point in the story, which is about 5 years after the Battle of Yavin, she hasn't set off looking for Ezra yet. So, or rather she's looking for him now and she hasn't teamed up with Sabine to go search for him yet. So that raises some questions. If Ezra Bridger is the primary source of the high M count, which is strongly suggested by the fact that Moff Gideon didn't really care about keeping Baby Yoda's body intact. Remember, Moff Gideon sent in a flamethrower to scorch everything in the building where he knew Baby Yoda was. So, Moff Gideon probably had another source of high M count material rather than Baby Yoda. If that was Ezra, it does make sense, given that Thrawn is now part of the picture. However, if it was Ezra, it strongly suggests Ezra escaped, and that he was somewhere within Thrawn's grasp when he escaped. So that why hasn't Ezra made his way back to Ahsoka or Sabine by the end of Rebels? So, did Ezra escape, get out of the frying pan and into the fire, as they say? Did he escape Thrawn and Moff Gideon just to be cast somewhere into the unknown regions? Is he out there making friends with Eli Vanto? Who knows? Further episodes of this series or a whole new series, we'll see. But, so again, we have that connection. Ahsoka is hunting Thrawn, presumably to help find Ezra. Moff Gideon is working for another big bad, possibly, who might be Thrawn. Moff Gideon had access to a much larger source of M-count material than just Baby Yoda, which is implied. So, this could all be just red herrings dropped by the creators, but it does imply that Baby Yoda was not the initial source of midichlorians. Okay, now let's face the final and most challenging change of all. Din Djarin was seriously going to hand over Baby Yoda to Ahsoka. Now, from a strictly storytelling perspective, this was handled perfectly. It was perfectly clear that Din didn't want to let Baby Yoda go. He was doing this because he believed it was in little Grogu's best interest, and the more Ahsoka explained about how the Force works, the more Din believed it. We get the lingering and touching scene where Din is slowly getting Baby Yoda ready to go with Ahsoka. Din believes that this will be the last time he'll get to hold the child, and he just sits there letting Grogu wake up in his arms. Then Din dresses Grogu, tucks the little baby dress in, and cradles Grogu in his arms as he heads out of the Razor Crest. It is a heartbreaking, and you really think the show is going to go through with it. Right up until Ahsoka shows up and says no dice. And the way she does this is just perfect. She tries to gently point out that Din is Grogu's father now, and it would be far better for Grogu to stay with the man he is so deeply bonded with. However, she isn't able to and resorts to first just flat out refusing and then sending Din and Grogu off on a quest to get them out of her Leku. Now, this is a fun way to wrap up the episode. It keeps Din and Grogu together in a very logical way. Ahsoka's fear of raising another Darth Vader does ultimately eliminate her from the child's list of possible caregivers, even if her life wasn't already just as violent and unsettled as Mando's. And this is really telling. Ahsoka was the logical person for a Mandalorian to find, because Ahsoka is the Jedi with so many Mandalorian connections. So it's logical that Din's path would lead him to Ahsoka first. But she is imminently the worst person possible to train Baby Yoda, because little Grogu here has strong attachments, and Ahsoka is still massively mentally scarred from seeing what happened to Anakin. Not to mention, she has actually at least once rejected the Jedi way. However, I think this scene is doing something more. Ahsoka never said explicitly that she couldn't train the child because of little Grogu's fear or because of her own fear. That is what Yoda said of Anakin, and we naturally draw that conclusion. What Ahsoka focuses on when rejecting little Grogu is the attachment between Din and Grogu. Now take a step back. What is the biggest commonality between Din Djarin and Ahsoka Tano at this point? Their codes. They're both lone survivors of fallen and destroyed religious orders. They were both taken as children and raised under extreme conditions. Some might even say that they were both brainwashed by cults. Now, Ahsoka walked away of her own free will, but she questioned the code she had been raised to follow. Din hasn't rejected his code yet. He hasn't walked away from it, but he has been forced to question it by circumstances. Now, I've said that we've already had the two major beats of Din Djarin's hero's rebirth cycle. He was failing his code, and then he started standing up for his code. Now he's the single person upholding his code. Now he's questioning his code. So the next beat would be Din Djarin not rejecting his code, but finding the truth beyond his code, just like Ahsoka did and is doing. At this point in their story arcs, Din Djarin and Ahsoka are in the same place. They're really starting to question their codes. They see it as something good, something to cling to. Ahsoka uses what she has learned from the Jedi to help Baby Yoda. Din uses his code to argue for having her teach Baby Yoda. I kept my promise, you kept yours. But that scene where he says that shows the limitations of Din Djarin's code. Now Ahsoka, and we get to the point where we're looking at about the codes themselves. A lot of diehard Star Wars fans over the years have pointed out the flaws of the Jedi Order. The biggest human, or otherwise the flaw, is taking children and raising them as ascetics, cutting them off from their families and natural human, or otherwise, contact at an early age. This might raise a powerful Force wielder, but it does not raise a sane human. Humans have to have physical contact. Babies have to be cooed over, pampered, loved, attached. The way the Jedi raise children is in fact a very efficient way to factory produce easily manipulated psychopaths. Now, Ahsoka was raised in this way by the Order. That would be one of the last things she questioned. Her questioning would be more naturally be focused on the choices the adult Jedi made during the war, not how the creche system fundamentally works. But what if she is starting to question that? What if she was beginning to suspect that it might be better to leave a Force-sensitive tot with the people who not only care for them, but have a genetic and cultural imperative to love and care for them? Now, mostly I'm gathering this from how she interacted with Grogu whenever Din's back is turned, and especially the pleased smile she gave the Razor Crest as it takes off at the end of the episode. She seems to think that Grogu is best exactly where he is, but something more than just Din's insistence is compelling her to see Grogu Jedi trained. But this video is already getting too long, and I will go into the whole video on why Ahsoka might be questioning the Jedi child rearing methods later. Just leave it here that there are clues from the Clone Wars. So, what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Did I miss any major changes in this episode? Do you think Ahsoka would rather see Grogu raised as a Jedi or staying with Din? Leave a like if you agree, or leave a comment dicing my analysis with a lightsaber if you disagree. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.